The ship came out of fold space with a soft hum. Through the observation window, Ambassador Taiho Park saw something that took his breath away. Nexus Prime. The space station was larger than any city on Earth. It floated in the darkness, like a crown made of light and metal. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Taiho stood very still. He was 53 years old. His hair was gray at the sides. His face carried the lines of a man who had spent his life solving problems that seemed impossible. But nothing in his long career had prepared him for this moment. Behind him, his team gathered at the window. 12 humans. 12 representatives of Earth. They had traveled for 18 months through the cold emptiness of space to reach this place. To meet the Galactic Council. To introduce humanity to the stars, Yuna Kim, his translator, moved to stand beside him. She was young, barely 30, but her eyes were sharp and missed nothing. She had learned 14 alien languages in 3 years. She was the best Earth had. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. Taiho nodded. "Let's hope they think the same of us." The docking process took 2 hours. Alien officials scanned their ship, their bodies, even their thoughts. Taiho kept his mind calm and open. He had nothing to hide. Humanity had nothing to hide. When the airlock finally opened, a group of tall beings waited for them. The Violaire, their bodies were made of something like living crystal. Light moved through them in slow waves. Their faces had no expression that human eyes could read. The leader stepped forward. "I am Delos, High Arbiter of the Galactic Council. You are the humans." It was not a question. "We are," Taiho said. He bowed slightly. "Thank you for receiving us." Delos made no response to the bow. He simply turned and walked. The message was clear. Follow that the walk to the council chamber took them through corridors filled with wonders. They passed gardens where plants sang in frequencies humans could barely hear. They passed halls where beings of pure light drifted like ghosts. They passed warrior insects standing guard, their armor shining like black glass. Everywhere they went, aliens stopped to stare. Some whispered to each other, some laughed. The sounds were different from human laughter, but the meaning was the same. These small, soft creatures thought they belonged here. How amusing. Yuna translated some of the whispers. "They're calling us primitive. They say we still use chemical rockets. They say our lifespans are embarrassingly short." "Keep walking," Taiho said softly. "Keep your head high." The council chamber was vast beyond imagining. It was built in a circle, with seats rising in tiers toward the ceiling. Hundreds of species filled those seats. Some had scales. Some had tentacles. Some had no solid form at all. They all watched as the humans entered. At the center was a raised platform. The human delegation was directed to stand there in the open, where everyone could see them. Delos took his place at the highest seat. His voice echoed through the chamber. "The species known as humanity has requested recognition by the Galactic Council. As is our law, we have studied their world. We have examined their technology. We have reviewed their history and their nature." Screens appeared in the air showing images of Earth, beautiful images of blue oceans and green forests, then images of wars. Bombs falling, cities burning, humans hurting each other in terrible ways. Taiho's heart sank, but he kept his face calm. "The evaluation committee has made its judgment," Delos continued. "We will now vote." One by one, each section of the chamber cast their vote. The Velar, the Morthok, the Lunari. A dozen other species Taiho did not recognize. When it was done, Delos stood. "The vote is unanimous," he announced. His crystal body flickered with cold blue light. "Humanity is classified as a Tier 7 species." A wave of sound passed through the chamber. Clicks, hums, vibrations. All of them carrying the same tone. Amusement, dismissal, contempt. Yuna's hands shook as she translated. Tier 7 is the lowest rank. It means primitive. It means unstable. It means not worthy of integration. Taiho felt the words like a blow to his chest. But he did not move. He did not speak. Delos was not finished. Humanity will be granted a small outpost on the moon designated Coro 7. You will have no trade rights. You will have no seat on this council. You will have no voice in galactic affairs. These terms are final. Silence fell over the chamber. Every alien I was on, the humans now, waiting, perhaps hoping for an outburst, for proof that the judgment was correct, that these creatures were indeed primitive and emotional. Taiho took a slow breath. Then he stepped forward. "We understand," he said. His voice was steady. "We thank the council for its time." That was all. No argument. No begging. No anger. Behind him, Yuna clenched her fist so hard her nails cut into her palms. But she, too, remained silent. The delegation was escorted out. The walk back to the ship felt longer than before. The whispers were louder now. The laughter was less hidden. When they finally reached their ship, when the airlock closed behind them, one of the younger delegates broke down. His name was Jinwoo. He was an engineer. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child. "They didn't even give us a chance," he said, his voice cracking. "They looked at our worst moments and decided that was all we were." Yuna put a hand on his shoulder. She had no words of comfort. Only Taiho spoke. He stood in the center of the ship, looking at his team. These 12 humans who had crossed the stars with hope in their hearts. "They called us lesser," he said quietly. "Maybe they're right. Maybe by their measures we are." The team stared at him. "But measures can change." His eyes hardened. "And we are not finished." Outside, Nexus Prime continued to shine. Inside, a small ship carrying 12 humans began its journey to a barren moon called Cora 7. The galaxy had made its judgment. It would learn to regret it. 5 years passed on the barren moon called Cora 7. The first year was the hardest. The soil was toxic. The air was thin. The temperature dropped so low at night that metal became brittle. The Galactic Council had given humanity this place because they believed nothing could survive there. They were wrong, Commander. Don Lee stood on a ridge overlooking the human settlement. He was 41 years old, with broad shoulders and hands that had known hard work all his life. Before this, he had been a Marine. Before that, a farmer's son. He knew how to build things from nothing. Behind him, the settlement spread across the gray landscape. Domes of reinforced plastic, underground tunnels, hydroponic farms glowing green through their windows, solar panels and wind turbines. A landing pad where 3 small ships sat waiting. 5 years ago, there had been nothing here but rock and dust. Now, 300 humans called this place home. Lieutenant Hannah Choi walked up to join him. She was his second in command, a woman of 35 with short black hair and quick eyes. She had a talent for seeing problems before they became disasters. "Hey, the water recyclers are running at full capacity again," she reported. "Jinwoo fixed the filtration system." Again, Do nodded. "That's the 3rd time this month." "The Veeler merchants sold us broken parts." Again, it was an old complaint. The council had declared that other species could trade with humans, but there were no rules about fairness. The VLA charged triple prices for equipment that was already damaged. The Morthok ships sometimes accidentally bumped into human cargo vessels, destroying supplies. The Lunari simply pretended humans did not exist. Tier 7 meant invisible. It meant worthless. It meant fair game. But humans adapted. They always had. In her small workshop, engineer Minji Han took apart a broken VLR generator. She studied every piece, learning how it worked, finding where it had been sabotaged. Then she rebuilt it. Better, stronger. When she was done, it produced twice the power it was supposed to. In the medical bay, Dr. Nario treated a worker who had been injured in a mining accident. She had no alien medicine, no advanced technology. She had her training, her hands, and her refusal to let anyone die on her watch. In the communications room, Unikim listened to alien broadcasts, learning new languages, gathering information. She had become the settlement's ears. She knew things about the galaxy that the council would rather keep secret. And in his small office, Ambassador Taiho Park made quiet plans. He was patient. He had always been patient. The galaxy had judged humanity in a single moment, but Taiho knew that judgments could change. It would take time. It would take proof, but it could be done. He began reaching out. First there was Viren, a Morthok exile. His people were warriors bound by strict codes of honor. Viren had broken one of those codes to save innocent lives. His own kind had cast him out. Now, he wandered the edges of civilized space, selling information to survive. Taiho met him in secret on a trading station. They talked for hours. By the end, they had an agreement. Viren would share what he knew about the galaxy. In return, the humans would give him something he had lost: respect. Then there was Horus, a Lunari scholar. The Lunari were beings of light and energy. They considered themselves above physical concerns. But Horus was different. She was curious. She had studied human broadcasts that leaked into space, their music, their art, their stories. She came to Chorus 7 in secret. She drifted through the settlement like a gentle flame, watching humans work and live and laugh. She saw a mother singing to her child. She saw old men playing games with colored stones. She saw lovers holding hands under the cold stars. Your people feel so much, she said to Taiho. It seems exhausting. Taiho smiled. It is. But it's also what keeps us going. Horus visited many times after that. Each time, she left with more questions. Each time, she returned with more interest in these strange, emotional creatures the galaxy had. Dismissed, word began to spread. Slowly, quietly, the lesser species on Chorus 7 was not dying. They were growing. They were building. They were making friends in unexpected places. On Nexus Prime, Arbiter Delos heard the rumors. His crystal body flickered with irritation as he reviewed the reports. The humans are thriving, one of his aides reported. Their settlement has grown by 40% in 2 years. Survival instincts, Delos said dismissively. Even vermin survive, there's more. The aide hesitated. Some of our citizens are trading with them. Fairly, the humans are gaining respect. Delos turned sharply. Respect for a Tier 7 species? They work hard. They keep their word. They help anyone who asks, even species who treated them badly. The aide paused. It's becoming noticed. Delos was silent for a long moment. Then he waved his hand. It means nothing. They are still primitive. They are still lesser. The galaxy does not change its mind because a few creatures dig holes in the dirt on a worthless moon. But even as he spoke, something cold moved through his crystal heart. A feeling he had not experienced in centuries: doubt. Doubt on Chorus 7. Doan Lee finished his evening walk and returned to the settlement. The domes glowed warm against the dark sky. He could hear laughter from the common hall. Someone was playing music. Children were running through the corridors, chasing each other in some game with rules only they understood. Hannah met him at the door. Good news. Earth is sending another supply ship. And 50 new colonists? Doan nodded. 50 more humans who chose to come here. To this barren moon? To prove something. We're building something, he said quietly. Something they didn't expect. Hannah looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Nexus Prime glittered with power and pride. Somewhere out there, great species made great decisions about who mattered and who didn't. Let them ignore us, she said. Let them laugh. When the time comes, they'll see. Neither of them knew that time was coming soon. Neither of them could imagine what it would cost. But both of them were ready. The warning came at midnight. Every screen in the human settlement flickered at once. Every speaker crackled with the same message. Emergency broadcast. All channels. Priority 1. Commander Doan Lee was in his quarters when it happened. He was out of bed and running before the message finished playing. The control room was chaos when he arrived. Hannah was already there, her face pale in the glow of the screens. Yuna was translating the alien broadcasts as fast as they came in. Her hands were shaking. What's happening? Doan demanded. Yuna looked up at him. Her eyes were wide with something he had never seen in her before. Fear. The galaxy is dying, she said. At the center of the galaxy, there was a black hole. It had been dormant for millions of years. A sleeping giant? The great civilizations had built their empires around it, trusting in its stillness. It was no longer still. Something had awakened it. Scientists would argue about the cause for years. A collision with a rogue star? A shift in cosmic forces? Divine punishment from angry gods? It didn't matter. What mattered was the result. The black hole was sending out gravitational pulses. Waves of invisible force that traveled through space at impossible speeds. Each pulse destabilized everything it touched. Planets cracked. Stars wobbled in their orbits. Space stations tore themselves apart. 3 homeworlds were already gone. The Velar's colony at Kristen. The Morthok breeding grounds on Vorfor. The Lunari sanctuary at Light's End. Billions of lives, lost in moments. And the pulses were still coming. Doan watched the reports scroll across the screens. System after system falling into chaos. Ships destroyed. Stations failing. Emergency signals flooding every channel. And then the worst news of all. Nexus Prime is failing, Hannah said quietly. Their shields can't handle the gravitational stress. The station is breaking apart. Nexus Prime, the heart of the Galactic Council. Home to millions. The greatest achievement of galactic civilization, Duhun turned to look at his team. They were all there now. Jinwoo, the engineer. Nari, the doctor. Minji with grease still on her hands from her workshop. 24 others who had come running at the alarm. They all knew what Nexus Prime represented. The council that had judged them. The species that had called them lesser. The civilization that had given them a dying moon and expected them to disappear. They're asking for help, Yuna said. Her voice was strange. All channels. Any ships? Anyone who can hear? Please help. Silence fell over the room. Jinwoo spoke first. They didn't help us. They laughed at us. They cheated us and ignored us and treated us like animals. Minji nodded slowly. They said we weren't worthy, that we didn't matter. Doan stood very still. He remembered the day they arrived at Nexus Prime, full of hope. He remembered the walk of shame after the Council's judgment. He remembered 5 years of struggling on a barren moon while the galaxy pretended they didn't exist. He remembered all of it. Then he spoke. Get every ship ready to fly. Ginwoo stared at him. Commander? Every ship. Every shuttle. Every mining rig with an engine. Doan's voice was hard as iron. Pack emergency supplies. Medical equipment, tools, whatever we have. Hannah stepped forward. Doan, they called us lesser. They gave us nothing. Why should we? Because they need help. Doan turned to face her. His eyes were calm, but there was fire behind them. Because that's who we are. The room was silent. Then slowly, Nari nodded. I'll get the medical kits. Jinwoo sighed and pushed himself off the wall. I'll check the engines. One by one they moved. Within an hour, the settlement was transformed. Every human who could move was working. Loading supplies, running diagnostics. Preparing for a journey into hell, Taeho Park arrived from his office. He had been in contact with Earth, with other human colonies scattered across the nearby systems. The response was the same everywhere. Everyone's coming, he said to Doan. Every human ship in range. They're all coming. Doan nodded. It didn't surprise him. It was what humans did. Ambassador Salmon Beak was aboard the first ship out of the Sol system. Dr. Kung Yoon, astrophysicist, was already calculating shield frequencies and structural weak points. Across a dozen worlds, humans dropped what they were doing and flew toward the disaster. The convoy from Cora 7 launched at dawn, 12 ships. 300 humans, flying toward a dying space station filled with people who despised them. Hannah sat beside Doan in the lead ship. Through the window, they could see the other vessels falling into formation. Cargo ships and mining rigs. Personal shuttles held together with tape and prayer. A fleet of junk, crewed by the galaxy's lesser species. "This is probably suicide," Hannah said quietly. Doan checked his instruments. "Probably they won't thank us. Probably not." "Then why?" Doan was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "When I was young, my father told me something. He said the measure of a person isn't what they do when it's easy. It's what they do when it's hard. When they have every reason to walk away." He looked at Hannah. The galaxy thinks we're lesser because we die easily and fight too much. Maybe they're right, but we also help. Even when it hurts. Even when we have every reason not to." He turned back to the stars ahead. That's the part they never measured. The convoy flew through the chaos. Gravitational pulses rocked the ships. Emergency systems screamed warnings, but they kept going. Ahead, Nexus Prime came into view. It was wounded. Whole sections were dark or breaking away. Fires burned in the void. Debris floated everywhere. Distress signals filled every channel. Cries for help in 100 different languages. Duhan opened the fleet-wide communication. "All ships," he said. "We're going in. Find survivors. Save who you can. Don't stop until there's no one left to save." Behind him, 300 humans prepared to do the impossible. The lesser species had arrived. The first ship through the debris field was a cargo hauler called the Morning Star. Pilot Yoon Kang sat at the controls, her hands moving faster than thought. A chunk of metal the size of a house spun toward them. She rolled the ship sideways, missing it by meters. "Clear path to Section 12, she reported. "Heavy damage. I see survivors on the hull. Get them." Doan's voice crackled through the radio. "All teams begin rescue operations." The humans spread out through the dying station like blood cells fighting an infection. They had no authority here, no permission, no plan approved by the Council. They simply saw people dying and refused to accept it in Section 12. Engineer Jinwoo Seo cut through a jammed airlock with a plasma torch. The metal was Morthok design, harder than anything on Earth. It took him 10 minutes of continuous cutting. His arms burned. His torch was nearly empty, but he kept going. When the door finally fell, he found 30 Morthok warriors inside. The proud insectoid species, the ones who had harassed human ships for years, were huddled together like frightened children. Their compound eyes blinked at him in confusion. "Human?" One of them clicked. "Why human here?" Ginwoo didn't waste time explaining. "Can you walk? We need to move. This section is failing." The Morthok stared at him. Then, slowly, they began to rise. On the other side of the station, Dr. Nario set up an emergency medical station in a half-collapsed corridor. Wounded aliens were everywhere. Vila, with cracked crystal bodies. Lunari, whose light was flickering and dying. Species she had never seen before, bleeding fluids she couldn't identify. She had no training in alien biology. She had no proper equipment. She had bandages, basic tools, and a medical database she had built herself over 5 years of study. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. But Nari worked anyway. When she didn't know how to treat a wound, she asked the patient. When they couldn't answer, she made educated guesses. When her guesses were wrong, she tried again. A young Veeler was dying in front of her. His crystal body was shattered in a dozen places. The light inside him was fading. She whispered, hands trembling. "I don't know how to help you." The Veeler looked at her with eyes like broken glass. "You came," he said weakly. "No one comes for lesser species." Nari felt tears on her cheeks. "We're the lesser species. We came anyway." She worked on him for an hour. She used everything she had. And when his light finally stabilized, when he stopped dying, she allowed herself one moment of exhaustion before moving to the next patient. "Commander, Doan led a team into the station's core. The power systems were failing. Without them, the shields would collapse completely. Without shields, the next gravitational pulse would tear Nexus Prime apart. The main reactor was a nightmare of fire and broken machinery. Veeler engineers had tried to fix it and failed. Their technology was advanced but delicate. It wasn't built for crisis. It wasn't built for improvisation. Human technology was built for exactly that. Du-hun surveyed the damage. Mingy, what do you see? Minji-han climbed over twisted metal, her eyes scanning everything. The primary coupling is gone. Secondary systems are overloaded. The whole thing is trying to shut down. Can you fix it? Mingy was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. It was a tired, dangerous smile. Get me that Morthok hull plating. The stuff from the crashed ship outside. And I'll need about 20 meters of cable. Any kind. They worked for hours. Minji directed while others carried and welded and connected. She used alien components in ways their creators never imagined. She combined technologies that were never meant to be combined. It was ugly. It was crude. It violated 100 engineering principles. It worked. The reactor stabilized. The shields held. Nexus Prime stopped dying. Across the station, the rescue continued. Pilot Yoon Kong made run after run through the debris field, each time pulling more survivors to safety. Lieutenant Hannah Choi organized the chaos, directing human teams to wherever they were needed most. Ambassador Somanbeek coordinated with Earth and the other colonies. Ensuring a steady flow of supplies and reinforcements, Dr. Kyung-yoon worked with Oris, the Lunari scholar, calculating ways to predict the gravitational pulses. Their theories weren't perfect, but they gave the station precious seconds of warning before each wave hit, and in a sealed chamber deep in the administrative section. Arbiter Delos was dying. The room had collapsed around him. Debris pinned his crystal body. The air was running out. He had sent distress signals, but his own people were too busy saving themselves. He was going to die alone. The High Arbiter of the Galactic Council, who had judged entire species with a wave of his hand, was going to die forgotten in a broken room. Then he heard the cutting torch, thought the door fell inward. Through the smoke and dust, a human woman stepped inside. She was small, with black hair and tired eyes. Her hands were burned from work. Her clothes were stained with alien blood. Yuna Kim, the translator. The one who had stood silent while her people were declared lesser. She looked at Delos for a long moment. He was the one who had pronounced the judgment. He was the one who had smiled when humanity was dismissed. He expected her to leave, to take her revenge through inaction. It was what he would have done. Instead, she moved to his side. She began pulling debris away from his body. Why? He gasped. His voice was barely a whisper. Why save me? Yuna didn't stop working. Because you needed help? It was so simple. So impossibly simple. Delos had lived for 3,000 years. He had studied philosophy and politics and the nature of civilization. He had never understood something so basic. They helped because he needed help. Yuna freed him from the rubble. She supported his weight as they made their way out of the ruined section. Around them, the station shook with another gravitational pulse. But the shields held. The humans had made sure of that. By the time the crisis ended, 47 hours had passed. The humans had not slept. They had not stopped. Many were injured. Some had died, crushed by debris or caught in explosions. But Nexus Prime still stood, and the galaxy had seen everything. They had seen humans charge into danger without hesitation. They had seen them weep over fallen strangers and then rise to save more. They had seen engineers working until our hands bled. Doctors treating enemies as patients. Pilots flying impossible routes because impossible was just a word. They had seen what lesser meant, and they began to understand. How wrong they had been 1 week after the crisis. The Galactic Council met again. The Grand Chamber was damaged, but functional. Human engineers had helped repair it, just as they had helped repair everything else. Cracks still ran through the walls. Temporary supports held up sections of the ceiling. The perfect beauty of Nexus Prime was gone, replaced by something rougher but stronger. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched the broadcast. This was the most important council session in living memory. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Everyone wanted to see it. Ambassador Taiho Park stood at the center of the chamber with his delegation. They looked different from the first time they had stood here. Their clothes were stained and torn. Their faces were tired. Bandages covered burns and cuts. Commander Doan had a broken arm in a sling. Yuna stood with her burned hands wrapped in white cloth. They looked like they had been through a war. Because they had. The seats around them were filled, but the atmosphere was different now. No laughter. No whispers of contempt. The aliens watched the humans with something new in their eyes. Something that looked almost like shame. Arbiter Delos rose from his seat. He moved slowly. His crystal body still bore the marks of damage. The light inside him pulsed unevenly, a reminder of how close to death he had come. How close they all had come. The chamber fell silent. Delos looked at the human delegation for a long moment. Then he spoke. 7 days ago, this station was dying. Our shields were failing. Our people were trapped. Our greatest engineers could not save us. His voice echoed through the chamber. We sent distress signals to every corner of the galaxy. We begged for help from anyone who could hear. He paused. Do you know who answered? The question hung in the air. Not our allies. Not our trade partners. Not the species who owed us favors or sought our approval. Delos turned slowly, looking at the assembled council members. The ones who answered were the ones we had declared unworthy. The ones we had mocked and cheated and ignored. He faced the humans again. Humanity came. Every ship they had, every person who could help. They flew into a disaster that was not their problem, to save people who had never shown them kindness. Delos's crystal body flickered with light. I was trapped in a sealed chamber. My air was running out. I had accepted my death. He looked directly at Yuna. A human woman cut through the door. She pulled me from the rubble. She carried me to safety. The chamber was absolutely silent. I asked her why. Why save the one who had condemned her species to the lowest rank? Delos's voice softened. She said, because you needed help. He let the words settle. We judged humanity by the wrong measures. We looked at their technology and called it primitive. We looked at their lifespan and called it brief. We looked at their conflicts and called them unstable.
Ouch.
Delos shook his head slowly. We never looked at what they do when others are in danger. We never measured their courage or their compassion or their stubbornness in the face of impossible odds. He straightened and his light burned brighter. We were fools. A murmur ran through the chamber. In 3,000 years, no arbiter had ever admitted such a thing publicly. Delos raised his hand for silence. The Galactic Council formally rescinds humanity's Tier 7 classification. Effective immediately. The murmur became a rumble. Some species protested. Others cheered. Most simply stared in disbelief. Delos spoke over the noise. Earth is granted full membership in the Galactic Council. Full trade rights. Full representation. A permanent seat in this chamber equal to any species that sits here. He turned to face Tiho directly. Ambassador Park, your people saved this station. They saved millions of lives. They asked for nothing in return. Delos did something that no arbiter had ever done before another species. He bowed, deeply, formally, without reservation. Out. We called you lesser. We regret it. Deeply and truly, we regret it. The chamber erupted. Arguments, applause, confusion, 1,000 different reactions from 1,000. Different species, but Taiho ignored all of it. He stepped forward. His body was exhausted. His mind was foggy from lack of sleep, but his eyes were clear. Arbiter Delos, he said. His voice was calm, as it always was. 5 years ago, you gave us a barren moon and expected us to fail. We built a home there instead. Not because we wanted to prove you wrong, but because building is what we do. He took another step. 1 week ago, your station was dying. We came to help. Not because we wanted your approval, but because helping is what we do. He stopped directly in front of Delos. We didn't come to the galaxy looking for power or revenge. We came because we believed in something. We believed that beings from different worlds could stand together, could learn from each other, could be better together than apart? Taiho extended his hand. We still believe that. The question is, do you? The chamber held its breath. Delos looked at the extended hand. Such a simple gesture. Such a human gesture. An offer of partnership between equals. He reached out and took it. The galaxy watched as crystal fingers closed around human flesh. Two species that had been so far apart, now connected by a simple touch. We have much to learn from you, Delos said quietly. Perhaps you will teach us, Taiho smiled. Perhaps we'll learn from each other. Behind him, his delegation stood a little taller. Doan with his broken arm, Yuna with her burned hands, Jinwoo, Nari, Minji, Hana, and all the others who had crossed the stars and walked through fire. They had been called lesser. They had proven themselves so much more that night. Celebrations spread across the galaxy. On Nexus Prime, humans and aliens shared meals together for the first time. On Koro 7, the colonists gathered to watch the broadcast, cheering and crying and holding each other. On Earth, people who had never cared about space looked up at the stars and felt something stir in their hearts. Pride, hope, the knowledge that their kind had touched something greater than themselves. The universe was vast and cold and indifferent. It didn't care about rankings or classifications or who was lesser or greater, but beings cared. And sometimes that was enough. In the repaired Grand Chamber of Nexus Prime, a new seat was installed. Simple, sturdy, built by human hands from materials taken from a barren moon above it. A small plaque was mounted. Just a few words translated into every language in the galaxy. It read, "Because you needed help." The lesser species had found their place among the stars, and the stars would never be the same.